Even during the Gulf War, one of the things the Americans were able to do, though it wasn't strictly hacking, but what they did was that they were able to use the codes from the French, who supplied Saddam Hussein with his armaments, to take down his radars so he couldn't see them coming, to take down his command and control so he couldn't even respond when they were overhead. This is the way cyber warfare is going. So let us not necessarily look, though there are kinetic implications, but really a cyber attack from a military point of view is actually an exploit that takes advantage of people, takes advantage of intellect, takes advantage of systems and processes. It's not simply about, and it does happen, where you can induce the electronics of the generator to make the generator explode. One of the examples I want to give next week when I speak at the War College is exactly that. That if you think you are a Navy commander and you are focusing on your electronics in terms of your navigation, your electronics that take your ship, that allow your guns to shoot or missiles to fire or direct them, that is good. But if as a Navy commander, you do not worry about the electronics that power your engines, and your engines explode, I mean, they may not damage the ship, but a ship without an engine in modern times, I think, is a sunk ship. So these are some of the things we need to think about. Now, coming to the question of norms, let us understand. These are some of the issues we are going to talk about. I'll just skip through them. The presentation will be available. It's already on the system. Basically, a norm is a standard or pattern. It's something that we expect. It's shared expectations. In classical kinetic warfare, there are things you don't do. We follow the Geneva Convention. You don't bomb hospitals. You don't kill women. You don't kill children. It is not that people don't do so. But at least because of those norms, if they do, you have a yardstick to measure that they have done this, that this is a generally agreed and accepted no-no. So certainly from a national security perspective, this cyberspace is a very, very new phenomenon. Now, why should you establish norms? Again, norms bring some level of order. Order brings predictability. Predictability minimizes, okay, thank you, sir, minimizes misinformation. When people are well informed, there's less likelihood of conflict. And of course, when you have less conflict, hopefully you would also have more peace. Societies will flourish. But again, those are assumptions. It is not always so, but that is the intent and the hope. So how are norms established? Well, there are many ways. There are conventions and declarations. The UN is a major, major way of establishing norms. There are also inclusive and deliberative processes. I'm sure Reverend Sunday can tell you about the multi-stakeholder process of NERA, of ICANN. So these are ways of establishing norms. And of course, some countries can get together and make a few policies, especially if you are a bit big, there's a level of might is right. By the time America, Russia, China, one or two countries like that get together and say, this is the way things should be done, then most of us in our part of the world will have not much choice but to adapt. So, there is no perfect way to create norms. It's actually a very, very difficult process. You must have some very difficult conversations. And I want, in the course of our discussion here today, to talk about how we, in an organization that I'm working with, are trying to create norms. Sometimes the American delegates, the Russian delegates, and the Chinese delegates cannot agree. You have a three-way split. And then the Cuban delegate comes with his own fourth way. So they are often very, very difficult conversations. You must take the long-term view. And actually, in the last few months, there was a process called the ngNOG on cybersecurity. Basically, that process has ended in failure. I've spoken to some Nigerians who don't agree, but I think from my interaction with professionals abroad and my reading of news, basically, this process has failed. Now, that doesn't mean the process will not continue in some way, shape, or form, but I'm just trying to point out how difficult it is that even the UN in particular cannot get the few states, the experts. And really, I think it was just 3 states. I think it was Cuba, Russia, China, and somebody else, 4 states, that actually were not very happy with some of the wording. And I'll give you a very interesting example. The Americans want to use the wording cyberspace. The Russians said, no, we must use information technology. We're sitting in this room, what's the big deal? Well, apparently, if you use information technology, then the Russians can use that as a way to extend it into information management, propaganda, control of the information populations receive. But if you use cyberspace, it blocks off that potential avenue for them. So, like I said, sometimes those discussions can be very, very intricate. Late last year, I was contacted, and some people said, would I want to join this organization? Basically, it's a commission, the Global Commission on the Security and Stability of Cyberspace. It is primarily funded by the government of Holland, the government of Singapore, and Microsoft, and I think 1 or 2 others. And its basic function is to try and develop some set of norms, particularly for cyber war, but in general terms for cyberspace. And these norms, of course, you must have some level of coherence. To be very honest with you, I am extremely intimidated to be on this commission. Some of the people there, you have people like the Dark Tangent. He's the founder and owner and host of Black Hat. You have people like Vint Cerf, whom some of you here may know. You have Carl Bildt, who was not only the former Prime Minister of Sweden, but he was also the chairman of the first Internet Commission, which was called the London Process. So you have some very, very, not very, very, extremely intimidating global players. So I would say I'm a bit of the mumu on the bunch. Our chair, Marina, she is actually the former foreign minister of Estonia. And she was actually the Estonian ambassador to Moscow at that time that Estonia was attacked or under attack, allegedly from Russia. And I don't know if you know much about that attack in 2007. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, they were one of the poorest states in Europe. And so countries like Sweden and Norway, some of their neighbors, decided to support them by laying fiber to everywhere and everything, basically putting connectivity. They have a population, I think, of about 1.7 million. But today, they are probably one of the richest per capita nations in Europe. In fact, that's where Skype, I'm sure some of us use Skype, that's where Skype came from. So there was this statue in Tallinn, their capital. And they wanted, it was a statue dating back from when the Soviets were there. They didn't want to destroy it. They wanted to move it to a park, another place. And the Russians said no. And so the Russians, allegedly, let me qualify, started taking down their cyber infrastructure. So you can imagine, how many of us heard about the Arab Spring some years ago? Do you remember? Okay, because that would explain this. During the Arab Spring, there were a group of activists that teamed up with hackers, and they became the hacktivists, and they purposefully infected their systems with botnets. And these hacktivists went after 2 infrastructure. The first infrastructure was the top-level domain name, in our case, .ng. As you know, it's basically an index. If you take that thing down, you cannot send emails to .ng, you cannot receive emails from .ng, you cannot access .ng websites. You can imagine the confusion it would cause in our country. The second thing they went after was the central bank clearinghouse system. If you can take that down, you cannot withdraw money from your account, you cannot receive money, you cannot pay money, you cannot do online transfers, you can't even go to the bank and get cash. Imagine that happening for a day, for an hour, for a month, for a week. I mean, there will be riots in the streets. And these are the things the alleged Russian hackers went after to take down, because as you know, we've become very dependent on this infrastructure. Michael Chertoff, one of our deputy co-chairs, was the former U.S. Secretary of U.S. Department of Homeland Security. In fact, on the day of 9/11, that famous day, he was actually I think the chief prosecutor for the state of New York. So he has a long history and pedigree. And then another nice person, Lata Reddy, she's the former Deputy National Security Advisor of India. So these are the kind of people on the commission, very serious people. And as of today, basically, we have taken over the failed UNGGE process. So, let's talk and give you an example of a norm. Protect the public core of the internet. So what is the public core? Well, the public core are three types of infrastructure. The logical infrastructure, such as the TCP/IP, the DNS, and the routing protocols that take you to .com, .org, .net, and all of that. So, the next aspect of that public core are the physical infrastructure, such as the undersea cables. And of course, your organizational infrastructure. NERA is an organizational infrastructure, your internet exchange points, and your computer emergency response teams, for example. So the idea is, if we may use the example of a river, take River Niger. You need to protect the water. You need to protect the river. You do not want somebody in Niger to build a factory that will pollute the River Niger so that you cannot fish in Lokoja. So sometimes in life, a state may have to give up something for the public good. It's like whaling and these other things. So this is the idea that we are trying to convey. So that even if some states are quarreling with each other, even if they are at war, they shouldn't go after this. Because if you go after the public core, if you take it down in America, Nigeria is down. Even if it is North Korea and Germany that are fighting, or South Korea and North Korea fighting. So even within fighting, you should limit what you go after. So our strategic decision makers, usually strategic decision makers are top-level politicians, our DGs, our generals, our top president. These are some of the things that they need to understand and consider. We should not knowingly disrupt. Disruptions do happen by mistake. I mean, there have been cases where a company in, maybe Sunday will help me, but the company went and misconfigured its router, and because of that, there were blackouts in other parts of it. You know, accidents happen, mistakes happen, and we learn and we try. But it's the deliberate misconfiguration that is the problem. So, states must exercise significant amounts of self-restraint. One of the topics I love talking about is the weaponization of hate speech and fake news. And one of the ways to deal with hate speech and fake news is that if you're a politician and your political opponent is a victim of fake news or hate speech, you have to get up and speak. And the reason is that your opposition might be the victim today, but you might be the victim tomorrow. We have to think in those terms. And of course, we must not knowingly go out of our way to disrupt the critical infrastructure of another nation. And one of the things I've mentioned here is that many of us sincerely and truly believe that the internet is borderless. How many of us here believe the internet is borderless? Is that all? Okay. But there's another school of thought. There are some of us that would argue that internet has borders. and those borders are limited by a nation's jurisdiction. For example, if you are a hacker in London and you hack into a server in Lagos, and that server does a money transfer from Hong Kong, the Nigerian police cannot go to London and start looking at your system. It cannot go to the bank in Hong Kong and start investigating. It is limited by where the jurisdiction of your nation ends. So to that extent, one would argue that the internet does have borders. It is just that from the user perspective, you have the illusion of no borders.
Go to Interpol.
Yes, but that's the whole process, and even then, because if a state says you can't look at the servers in my country, nothing Interpol can do. And also, there's a very, very important conditionality that nation states must ensure that all human rights are maintained. Because this technology we have for monitoring, for checking up on where people are going, it's so easy to find out about other people, and I'm talking about surreptitiously. So all of a sudden you have somebody in the security community, he likes your girlfriend or boyfriend, he finds out everything about you, and is able to maybe publish some things and destroy your relationship. It is possible, it has happened in other climes. So we must be able to ensure that our basic rights as human beings are maintained. Now, how many of us in this hall today are actually researchers? Anybody? Okay. How many of us know researchers? Okay. For those of you who do research, I want you to take very careful note. For those of you who know researchers, I would like you to pass this on to them for me. Somebody, I think in the opening remarks, talked about one of the things that, I think, was it the consortium or ngNOG does, is fund research. I can't remember who, okay. The Global Commission funds research and has already started funding research. In fact, of the first 7 researchers that were contracted, one, I'm very happy to say, is a Nigerian, living in Nigeria. There were actually 2 that applied, if I may use that word, and the other one didn't make it for some very basic reasons, which I do need to share. It's not a criticism of them, but it's actually a critique of where we are. Basically, what they did was that in submitting their research proposal, they basically regurgitated what was requested, which is very common amongst us. It's partly our educational challenge. Okay? And if I may use the pejorative term, that's not what the white man is looking for. Yeah. You know, he wants to know, how are you going to go about it? What is the creativity you bring to bear? What are the alternate perspectives? And the actual research grants that we were to award were 5. But there were 2 particular research grant applications that we saw had some really creative way of addressing some of the research issues in the 5. We actually added 2 more to make it 7. But on paper, or in terms of what we requested for grant applications for. And it's not much money, but if you can get a couple of $1,000s in this era as a researcher, I'm sure you wouldn't unduly grumble. So, https, the cyberstability.org, please, if you don't get this paper, write that down. If you can't use it yourself, pass it on. So the research projects that were awarded were in these 5 particular areas. Defining the public code. What exactly is the public code? Because you can't create a norm for something you don't understand. And in fact, one of the issues we came up with very early on when we were reviewing the research applications was that there needs to be a standardization of taxonomy. What you understand as A, somebody else calls it B. So this was one of the first challenges we had. We also need to identify, the second one was, identifying the internet accessible critical information infrastructures. These are, again, these have gone. They are not for you. I'm just saying this was what happened. Overview of cyber diplomatic initiatives. Overview of cyber norms in theory and practice and protecting the core. So you can see the first and the last are very similar, but they were sufficiently nuanced that, because we cannot do our work without that work sitting on top of some kind of academic research. This is, for me, a big lesson for Nigeria. We cannot take some of these big decisions, public policy decisions, without some kind of underlying academic thinking. So what I would ask you to do as soon as it's convenient, go to the Global Commission website. There are 4 groups: peace and security, governance, law, and the technical. They all have their email addresses. You apply. It takes a few days for the moderators maybe to give you the permission. But by engaging in the global conversation, a couple of things happen. One, you become a bit more enlightened about the issues. 2, you get to meet not only some great people, but some incredibly smart people who are doing amazing things. 3, when the announcement comes for research grants, this is where it comes out of, not through me. And indeed, I cannot help you. Because I'm a commissioner on the commission, I must be careful of conflict of interest. My duty with you ends here. I am informing you, I am pleading with you to please go and participate. And very, very, if not most importantly, these norms are being developed. You, in particular, Africa in general, must have a voice. When they were developing the Geneva Convention, I don't believe Nigerians were involved. So as they say, we must speak now or forever hold our peace. So please, this is the opportunity for us to engage, for us to make an input on a global process. When you log in, and again, go to the website at the bottom, but once you get to cyberstability.org, you can get it. You just, when you're applying, you just introduce yourself, what is your affiliation, and a little bit about some of your research interests and the directions you are going. Please pass this on, it's important. So these are some of the examples of the research questions that we have been asking, and there's a whole bunch of them. I mean, ever before we send them out to researchers to apply, you know, we have about 60 or 100 questions, and we sift them, and we have some kind of scoring, so we, you know, so that we come up with the ones that, remember, we are paying your bill. So it is the questions that we need answers to that we are going to ask, not the questions you want answers to. This is the one at the bottom. To what extent can national election infrastructure be given internationally special status? I just want to dwell on this for a moment because it's important to us in Nigeria. How many of us believe that election systems and infrastructure should be protected? So most of us, we think it's important. Why must it be protected? Yes, sir?
So that the process will not be hijacked, so that it could remain credible.
I would agree with you. So, would it make sense, because under the Cybercrime Act that I mentioned, 2015, one of the clauses there permits the president to designate processes, systems, even institutions, as critical national information infrastructure, and thereby receive special attention. Would that make sense to you?
No.
So what would you do? You wouldn't designate it as a critical infrastructure.
Come again.
The Cybercrime Act of 2015 empowers Mr. President to designate whatever he feels appropriate as a critical national information infrastructure. For example, you could designate fiber cables running across the country. You could designate satellite stations. You could designate cell towers, those kind of things. Would you say the systems in ngNOG, because of their importance or criticality, could be considered for being designated as critical national information infrastructure?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a consensus here. So now, let us look at real-world examples. Why would I, as a hacker, care or bother to hack ngNOG? Why don't I just hack the electorate directly? Once I'm able to automate the spread, the creation and spread of fake news, I can get Donald Trump. So you see, sometimes in this cyberspace, you can do things much more subtly, much more elegantly than saying, oh, we are going to go and start bombing ourselves or killing thousands of people.
Maximum effect.
In fact, maximum effect. So, the takeaway, please. We need to have some very, very broad-based strategic conversations. We need those conversations to be based on sound academic research. As a group, ngNOG can begin to advocate for certain norms. There are many people in this country, when you say, oh, we need a lot of hackers, they start shaking. No. But the truth of the matter, and let me give you an example. How many of us have reached our home after a long day or we travel, the door is locked, and we have lost our key? Anybody here? It has happened. What did we do? You called the carpenter. And what did the carpenter do? He used his knowledge and his tools to get that door open. That is the hacking. Now, how many of us, after a long day at the office, a long travel, come back home, we have our key, but the door is open? Anybody? That happened. You've been hacked also. But you see the difference in the hacking. You see? And when I asked that question at the beginning, who is going to protect the digital Nigeria? It is us. And more importantly, we have to teach the digital.
But I would like to ask that being on that board and at that level, are you looking at anything like setting up a local, not mentorship and all, something that you can rally people around to ensure that people who are interested, for instance, have some form of local connection? Of course, we'll go global, we'll go to the site, obviously, but my point is a lot of times people are up there, they tell us things, but you see, the rise to the top is not easy. Sometimes, especially in Nigeria with all the limitations, but if you can ride on somebody's shoulder, right, it makes it easy. I'm not saying give us the questions of the research and all that. No, we don't need experts. Basically, what we need is, okay, this is the body. Like ngNOG, for instance, we know if I need knowledge of network stuff, I just need to attend the workshop, I meet instructors, I meet students, then I'm off, right? That's what keeps us coming back. So, are you looking at something like that? Is it against your code of ethics, or is it something that you can do, or set up a group, a working group, anything, so that the next, say, 4 or 5 years, will make tremendous progress? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent. First and foremost, I think that the fact that one is here, one is discussing, one has already started on that engagement that Chinwe mentioned. 2, I do not, and I cannot claim to be an expert on these things. And that was one of the reasons that I was very, very careful to point out that there are some of these like chat groups, because that is where that training, knowledge, insight you will get. Very importantly, am I available to engage, discuss, and the answer is yes. Okay? How? I'm not quite sure, but certainly this kind of fora, wherever possible, I try to come and speak to some of these issues. But Chinwe, I'm very, very happy that you are the first question to be raised, because you actually have brought forward an issue that I wasn't sure whether to raise or not, but I'm going to raise it because you came out first. Lara Mokedi, Rekia Shuaibu, Zarifa Mustafa, there's somebody else. Anyway, these are 3 people. I don't know if you noticed from their names, they are women. Lara Mokedi, I don't know if she's still there, but she was the head of information security at First Bank. Rekia Shuaibu is the chief information security officer of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Zarifa Mustafa is a lady that I have mentored, and she...
EFCC, you know, right?
No, that's a different one. She's actually now at Bayes University. I can't afford her anymore. She got her PhD in cloud forensics from Cranfield University, which is one of the world's foremost defense universities. And why I mention these names is because they're into a field that I love, which is cybersecurity. And you see, no nation on earth, no nation, I've said it 3 times, can make progress if it is not firing on all cylinders. Nigeria will not make progress if 50% of its population, its women, are left out. Especially in the area of cybersecurity, I would encourage our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, our nieces to get into. I'm sure most of the men in this hall will attest to the fact that women tend to pay a lot of attention to detail, much more than men. How many of us as men have been driving down the road, our girlfriend or wife is sitting next to us, and our eyes wander where they shouldn't, and madam notices? You know, they also tend to be much more diligent. So please, gentlemen, I will now talk to you. Please encourage your wives, your sisters, your nieces to get into these fields. They are not male fields. In fact, IT in the early days was actually female dominated. You know, the lady that got the bug, the admiral, it was a lady. I mean, what I'm saying is that, so Chinwe, thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring it up. We need to do a much better job of encouraging our girl children into some of these fields. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is ngNOG. It was actually just a bit of a dissension on the cybercrime thing about the president having those powers, and I think it's wrong. And my reason is this: Nigeria has a history of rushing to set out laws without actually spending time developing anything. So basically, in the area of cybercrime, all we've really done and all we're really advocating, all right, is to set out new laws that will be duplicated in other acts and statutes and stuff like that without actual development being put in place. If anything at all, I would have said that the president should have the powers to say this is an area for critical development. Take, for instance, a lot of the websites that the government owns, okay? They're a working hack. You get some chap who knows little or nothing about developing a website or putting any security in place, and the very tools he puts in place to monitor are self-effacing because in the first place, they already allow for outside interference. In that case, what now happens? You have said that you are going to criminalize an act that was done by your own developer. And that's what we keep doing in Nigeria, which is why eventually when it gets to the court systems, it's always going to fail. It's just an observation. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I would mention a couple of things in response. First of all, you are very correct. The Cybercrime Act as an act has many, many problems. For example, you can be prosecuted for importing cyber tools. What a cyber tool is, I don't know. I mean, let's face it, if you have an Android watch, arguably it's a cyber tool. But you see, the truth of the matter is that whether you like it or not, the law is the law. The president has that right. If we don't like it, we have to change that law. But also, if you look at other countries, chief executives of state have the right to designate specific things as critical infrastructure. Whether websites are correctly made or developed or whatever, as far as I'm concerned, that's a different issue. It's a problem. And I think that's one of the reasons you see places like NIDA trying to set up regulations about the quality of websites, at least government websites. That actually is a known process. But you see, one of the things that I would agree with you ought to happen is that NIDA needs to engage with the community to say, okay, listen, what can we do to harden our websites? You know, you may find out in some cases the community may even be more harsh in the kind of standards it insists on than even the government regulation. It does happen. But having said that, I think where the flaw is that institutions simply do not engage in those critical conversations, often difficult conversations. They often hide behind national secrecy. This is, we agree. But I think it's a very different issue from whether, in fact, for me, it's not whether the president should be empowered to designate something as a critical infrastructure. The question is, do we need things to be designated as critical infrastructure? If the answer is from time to time, yes, then the question is, who or what should have that power? All this is debatable, but for me, I think, for example, today, there is no doubt that oil and gas installations are critical infrastructure. You see? Maybe bridges also. There was a bridge near Tudumada on the way to Kano that I saw the pictures of it, but I'd actually happened to have gone under that bridge before. The riverbed had fallen below where the cement of the pylons was. So when during the dry season, you just see, in fact, even during parts of the rainy season, you just see the pylons. And I mean, you're talking of a good 5 meters of iron just open and bare and rusting. Now, you may argue, if that bridge collapses, what happens? Well, the major expressway to Kano is cut off. Those tomatoes that you are bringing from Kano to Zaria, Kaduna, and Abuja market, they will have to take, through doctor's hometown in Katsina, a very long route, and it may tax them on the way. In fact, he may even insist somebody it's taken to his family home for edible check. But none of us realize that that same bridge carries fiber optic cables across. So if that bridge collapses, Kano, at least fiber-wise, maybe there's satellite, but fiber-wise is cut off. That is how our north-south fiber cable, because the contractor just came and dug up the road, and nothing is happening. So my point is that sometimes when you designate something as a critical infrastructure, what happens is that you bring high-level focus and attention because it is important. But something could be important today and not so important tomorrow because other more important things come up. But so for me, what is important is to have a mechanism to determine so. If you say the National Assembly should do it, if you say the Office of the National Security Advisor should do it, if you say NIDA should do it, these are debatable. But for now, the law says the president has the right, it would be with advice, to designate something as critical. One final question maybe, so we make it 3? Yes, sir.
I wanted to share, this is my takeaway, whether I am correct. If you have a campus network and you are developing an acceptable use policy, you are already doing some of these norms,
yes.
Right? So that it's good to think simply.
I would agree. I totally agree. Thank you very much. Okay.
So no more questions? You can take one more.
It means you didn't understand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please let's give him another round of applause. So at this point we'll take our second presentation from the Reverend Gentleman. I'll be talking about a field that I am very interested in. So please put your hands together for Sunday.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to just spend a few minutes to sensitize us on Internet of Things as a new frontier. And I have about 25 slides, so I'll try to rush through them. The first is for us to look at the man and machine concepts. I call them MNM. We're all familiar with the internet. I think it's something that is under our belt now. If you tell my grandmother internet, she'll say, yes, WhatsApp, Facebook. I think that's done. But there are three other concepts. Internet of Things is a new frontier. On top of that, we're still going to look at artificial intelligence. We're not yet there. A lot of work has happened, but it's not yet a commodity product. When we were learning computer program, there was a language called Lisp. They said it's the programming language for artificial intelligence. I doubt if any of us has learned anything about Lisp or written any code about it. So let's still keep it as research information. And of course, robotics. It's very easy now. The last time my wife sent me a picture, she said we need a new security guard. And it was an Alsatian, a dog. And I just laughed, just looking at her caption, a new security guard. But today, many of us buy dogs, many of us use them. They work. But robots are still not commodity products you can buy in the market. There are still things you see in press briefings and expositions when you go to GITEX in Dubai. They are not things you can buy today and use. So I'll leave those as two things that we need to interface. But to say, for now, IoT remains the frontier that you and I can attack right away and conquer. And that's just what I want to show with this presentation. So, we're all familiar with the internet. I don't want to carry coal to Newcastle again. Obviously, we all agree that the internet is built on TCP/IP, isn't it? And that's a critical point of failure. Anytime there is denial of service on the TCP/IP protocol, you and I know Abdul Hakim will develop goose pimples. And that's a fact. Origin of Internet of Things. The term IoT was first used in 1999 by a British technology pioneer, some Kelvin Ashton, to describe a system where objects in the physical world can be interconnected using Internet of Sensors. My most frustrating thing today is driving down a road and getting stopped by the traffic light, and there's no car coming from either side. I'm the only person on the road. Suddenly the traffic light goes red. Then you have to stay. And of course, where you stay, there are some people doing Babia, Lantori, Kobo. It's so frustrating. I wish the light would just stay green and I will drive on. Why is the traffic light not aware of the fact that you are coming? Or you start down a long stretch of road with 4 traffic lights, and the first light gives you red. You escape that, and at the time you are getting to the next light, it goes red. Why don't the lights learn from each other that the red should be a function of the distance from each other and the speed you are traveling, so that if you've gotten a green from one light and you are proceeding, the other lights should learn that you are coming and should stay green as you drive, because there are no cars coming. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. That's an intervention that you and I can do. It does not require rocket scientists.
It was done.
It's been done.
In 1984, somebody named Zakaria at ABU developed such a traffic system. It actually took a toll of how many vehicles are coming this way, and the amount of time it led to pass.
Did you say 1984?
Yes. That
Before
farmer-
the internet.
That farmer-
He's ahead of his
That
generation.
farmer, he actually deployed it at the North Gate in ABU. So it's just that we didn't develop what we have. We didn't develop what we have.
I'm going to find him. Thank you for sharing this information. So, there has to be that interconnection of the physical systems so that proper decisions can be taken. So Ashton coined that term Internet of Things to illustrate the power of interconnecting RFIDs used in tracking goods within a corporate supply chain, using the internet so as to track goods without human intervention. And it's quite easy. The technology is there today to build ordinary sorters. If you go to YouTube and you just search for videos of sorters, you'll see people who have used cell phones, the camera on cell phone, to take pictures of balls as balls are coming, and there are paddles to sort the balls into containers. So you have red, green, blue, yellow, and paddles just sort those balls into the containers. That's the type of technology that NIPOST needs to sort letters, to sort parcels. It's not rocket science, but it has to be practical. Or for that matter, to sort people who are passing through gates by height, so that me and I still won't go through the same gate. All right? Then, today, we are using the Internet of Things to describe scenarios that we are using to tie together varieties of devices, sensors, and things to make better living. Shaks told me I must stop at 1:30, so I'm working towards that. Then we go on to artificial intelligence, which is at a higher level to what I am discussing, but it's important because if you don't know the end in mind, you'll be expending energy. I'm sure we all have heard the classic story of the fisherman who caught 3 fishes and was going home. And the Arthur Anderson consultant cornered him and said, just 3 fishes and you are closing. He said, you can catch 200 fishes, float a company, we do an IPO, and you get investors. And the guy said, when I get all these things, what then will I do? He said, then you retire, then you go on holiday. And what will I be doing when I'm on holiday? He said, and then you'll be fishing. He said, but I'm already on holiday now. So if you know the end in mind, you will not dissipate too much energy. So a lot of us are on holiday now, enjoying our lives. And so the beginning of AI we can trace to classical philosophers' attempt to describe human thinking. But it was not until 1956 that it was accepted as a term at one of the conferences at Dartmouth College, New Hampshire. So if you look at these evolutions, you see that the problem Baba just described has been with us. So artificial intelligence, which is supposed to ride on top of the data that we collect to make sense out of it, was invented before the means of collecting the data. Can you see the oxymoron? And if you go back, you see that most of those problems that we considered undoable in the past, technology is helping us solve them now. And we're going back to ancient concepts. So, the Origin of robotics. Again, robotics dates back to 1880, when a Czech playwright and novelist called Karen Kapel used it in a play that he made. And it comes from a Slovenian word for robota, which means forced labor or drudgery. Again, you see now that robotics, which should ride on top of artificial intelligence, was invented before artificial intelligence. Okay? And that's why quite a lot of research that has been done in the past has been forgotten, because the technology to drive it does not exist. I still remember a young man, Shina Regoke, who walked into my office in 1997 and described a payment system that is absolutely not different from Paga of today. But as at then, there was no mobile phone. Okay? So, what he described in 1997 is in use today, but it was not his creation, because the technology that would support his brainwave as at that time does not exist. Right? So it doesn't mean that those ideas have not existed. People have absolutely given up. I still have a memo or a letter I wrote to First Bank in 1998, where I requested for a uniform numbering system for bank accounts. And I got a reply to say it is not possible. Even First Bank, one bank, had different bank account numbers across branches. Hello, somebody. You could have two people with the same account number in the same bank because they didn't open it in the same branch. And the bank told me in writing that what you are asking for is not possible. But today we have NUBAN. NUBAN, Nigerian Uniform Bank Numbering System. So some problems, people have faced them years past, and the solutions they have had to wait for the future when they no longer need it.
You are in good company, sir.
I know I'm talking to my
Leonardo da
community.
Vinci designed planes 500 years before the first one was made.
So, very quickly, the evolution of IoT. IoT 1.0 was connecting computers. And so today, all our computers are interconnected. 2.0 is connecting people. And it's fun finding your primary school and secondary school friends on Facebook. Not because you know that's them, but because Facebook is telling you that if this person is friends with this person, and that person is friends with this person, then these two people must be friends. Very logical algorithm. And you look and say, oh boy, now you, why you change name? Omo, I didn't join now, Olori, I take it. But no matter how you try to mask the identity, it's still able to interconnect because of the friendship, let me say, aggregation. They're able to mine that data and know that if these two people are friends, then these two people must be friends. 3.0 would be connecting everything else. And I would show you that it's already happening and it can easily happen better. And of course, 4.0 will be matter-level communication. Things will just communicate because we have sensors to know them. How many people know what is called half-life in radioactivity? You all know it, isn't it? Excellent. So you take a piece of radioactive material and you come back after 1 year. Its radioactive level has fallen by half, isn't it? You come back after 1 year again, that level has fallen by half. And it keeps going, it never dies, isn't it? Now, think of this, ladies and gentlemen. We are having a conversation in this room now. We're talking, isn't it? We've emitted a sound. Can I prove to you that that sound we emitted in this room, that wave, continues to attenuate in time? It never dies. The level just goes down and down. Will this shock you that in 200 years' time, somebody can come into this room with a microphone that is so sensitive that he can go back 200 years to know what was said in this room then, using that half-life principle? It is not possible now because we are not able to build a microphone that is sensitive to the level of decaying sound. But mark my word, in the next 20 years it will happen. So all of you say, I love you in a corner room. In the next 20 years, they will know the lies that you told. And then the device will be like a button, You can just turn it to go back 10 years, 20 years, and then you just move a cursor on the screen to move it to location. I will come to your bedroom.
Will you be around it?
But about 2 weeks ago, the sun detected gravitational waves.
Don't get me wrong, it's just that Nigeria won't create an academy of science and put me there to continue to think of things. But I think of a lot of things. So why is there a confluence of man and machines? Very simple. You guys have done fantastically with making connectivity very ubiquitous. You've solved technical problems. Forget about what everybody says. You've solved the technical problems. There are other problems that are making it difficult for us. Okay? There's also a widespread adoption of IP networks. Once you can put IP on a device, you can be sure it can communicate. Or for that matter, you put Android on a device, you can be sure somebody is streaming my video right now, right? People are watching it on Facebook Live. It's as easy as that. Many years ago, you have to be talking to your provider. It is streaming we want to do. Can you support streaming? That question no longer exists. Next is that computing economics has been solved as a problem. All right? Today, if somebody wants to sell you 1 gigabyte of data for more than 1,000 naira, you will vote with your legs. Right? It's solved. It's no longer an issue. Some years ago, when we were struggling, Christy, we suffered. When we were telling people that you can sell data per megabit, people were like, what are you talking about? It's not possible. But today I laugh when everybody understands per megabit. Because when people came to Skynet then and they said they want connectivity, and you tell them we sell 20 megabits, they will say, no. Is it 1 computer or 2 computers? Or 2? I see Wally laughing. So you have to let them know that when you open 10 windows on 1 computer, it uses as much resources as 1 windows on 10 computers. They're like, what are you talking about? I say I want 10 computers. Some people's phones today have 8 core CPUs. 8 core CPUs on phones. I know how much Abdulakim paid for the 2 core he brought to Nairobi 10 years ago. You are laughing. I remember that machine. And he kept telling me, bragging that it is 2 core. Okay, when they carry 8 core for what? And I've spoken about advances in data analytics. You get on Facebook and you look at, and it says, I have seen the picture of Aminu. Do you want to tag him? Even if he's wearing shades, they're able to determine who is in the picture and ask you if you want to tag them. They could have tagged them. They are just warning you. Right? I said they are just warning you for you to know. Or, the one that freaks me most today, you send a Gmail message to somebody to say, I am getting married next week. You send a mail to somebody, I am getting married next week. Check your inbox. You will see where they sell wedding gowns as part of the advertisement. I hope you know. Or somebody sends you a mail to say, we have bought a ticket for you to be in Dubai this weekend. The first thing you see is, it gets added to calendar to say you have a flight to catch, imported from Gmail. And when it's time, the freakiest is I use calendar for my appointments. I live in Ibadan, I have a meeting in Lagos. Google Calendar will remind you, leave for Lagos now, 3 hours ahead of your meeting. And it will tell you there is traffic at Oregon, you don't want to be late. So we've solved, again, the issue of analytics. And of course, you all know what cloud computing has done. Before, it's you and your servers. Now, you just get an instance of a virtual machine in the cloud and you are set. Under 10 minutes, a server is deployed. You are running a service and you are making your money. So, those are factors.
So the analytics you are encouraging on the Hakeem's privacy.
Again, I hate to say it. The concept of privacy is arising out of ignorance. You are the only one who doesn't know what people know about you. That's it. And until you ask what they know about you, you won't know that they know more than what you are trying to hide from them. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, I have found out that it is when you try to say it is private that people want to know what's private about it. So, in fact, attempting the issue of privacy is what messes you up. Some 2 years ago, my daughter put on Facebook, "Happy birthday, Daddy. All I want from you is a brand new, no, you are the best daddy in the world. ATM par excellence. What I want from you is a brand new iPhone." On Twitter. And one boy replied, "Idiot, is your daddy on Twitter?" And then she replies, "Yes, and he is reading this." And then he replied, "In your mind." And then I replied, "Yes, I am here." And then he now said to me, "And you tolerate all the sexist posts from your daughter?" And I replied, "If I don't, she will still make it. I just will not know." And the boy called me. He said, "I wish a lot of fathers understand this." Ladies and gentlemen, today in this world, sit your 10-year-old data down. Let's talk about sex. And she will say, "What do you want to know?" That's the truth. You are the one who is outside the circle. They are in the circle. They know more than you.
In case you have forgotten, he's a reverend. Yes.
I am a realist, and I let people understand. So, when you talk of privacy, sir, the people who are struggling with privacy are the people who have something to hide. When you have nothing to hide, you are inside, people will give you respect. I know people on Facebook whose friends of friends cannot post on their wall, and I just laugh. For me, I took it out. So friends can post, friends of friends can post, because whether you like it, they will still say it where you won't see it. So where is robotics, AI, and IoT today? We have it in